When it comes to choosing props, I need to make sure that I'm choosing props that are going to be suitable throughout all of my sessions for babies to go in. I'm also looking for different things, so I often source them from local antique stores and in some cases on the side of the road during a curbside pickup, which is exactly where I found this metal bucket, and it was one of the very first props that I ever had when I first started photographing babies, so it's been with me for a long time. But to make sure that I can fit a baby inside my props, I need to sort of gauge, obviously, how big a baby is going to be and whether or not they're going to fit in there with supports to make sure that they're not going to come into contact with the edge of some of my props, because you can see both of these, one being metal and one being wood, they're very hard surfaces. I've also got some pointy, sharp edges, and when you're working with old sort of vintage antique props, you can have splinters and things like that. So when I am using props, I need to make sure that the baby is not going to come into contact with any of the surface. So to make sure that they're large enough and I can fit those supports in to make sure the baby is comfortable and secure and safe at all times is really important. So there's a few things I look at, because babies come in all different shapes and sizes, and when I'm working with something like a bucket, obviously they're going to have their legs tucked up underneath them, so getting them down inside the bucket's going to be nice and easy. To make it safe, I weight the bottom with things like sand. As you can see in the bottom, I've just got a bag of sand. That makes that bucket nice and heavy. And then that way, I can line it and still have enough room in there for a much larger baby. What I then do is create a firm surface around the top to make sure that the baby doesn't come into contact with any of those sharp edges. And when it comes to using bowls like this one, and you can see it's nice and deep, which allows the baby to go down inside the bowl, and it's kind of small, but at the same time, it is wide enough for me to put a baby in. And how I test that is by using my elbow to my wrist and hand. And if I can place them, as you can see, inside the bowl like that, I can usually gauge whether or not I'm going to be able to curl a baby up nice and comfy inside a prop like this. But what I do look for is to make sure that there's a lot of depth, and of course that circumference around the outside of the bowl is going to be wide enough for me to be able to put enough support in there to keep that baby comfortable and secure. When I am looking for props like this, obviously I want them to be unique. I want them to stand out, which is why I go to different places to source them. And when I am looking at different types of props, safety is always going to be at the forefront of the decision in terms of what I buy. I tend to avoid anything that's breakable. So if I was to sort of drop one of these, neither of them is going to break. If I was to drop, say for example, a glass bowl or a ceramic bowl or something like that, it's breakable. Now if any of them have cracks and you don't drop it and you put a baby in it, the pressure of the supports and the weight of the baby could potentially break a surface like that. These are all things that I think about. And you know what? It just needs to be strong, stable and sturdy when you are looking for different props, and making sure that the baby can't fall out or topple over. Really, really important. If you are thinking about photographing babies in different situations that aren't safe, always compile a composited image together. And that means photographing the baby on a different type of surface and then putting the photos together in Photoshop as a composite. That's probably my best advice for you. But when you're using different props, in terms of that safety, always have a spotter, because babies are unpredictable. They can move at any point in time. So yeah, use the elbow to wrist as an example of the size of the prop. If it was anything smaller than this, I wouldn't be able to fit an average size baby in here, possibly a very small baby. But I am always looking for props, especially when I'm investing a lot of money in them, that they are going to be really versatile throughout my session, and I am going to get a lot of use out of them, depending on obviously all the different shapes and sizes of babies that do come into the studio. And I am looking for different ways that I can use them. Obviously with a bucket like this, I'm only really going to be able to do the chin on hands upright in a prop type of pose. But with something like this, I know that I can photograph the baby on their back down inside this bowl and also bring them up so they are upright in it as well. So I'm going to get lots of different looks out of this one type of prop, which is really, really important. So yeah, have fun, start looking elsewhere for different ideas and props that you can introduce into your studio, and that way you're going to create a point of difference for you and your business.